For those of you that may not have been following this channel, or me, for all that long, I'm here to inform you that I love survival games. Like, you guys know I love me some Struggle Bus, right? I love it. So when the devs of this macabre, Celtic, and Norse-style survival game asked me to make a review of their alpha playtest, I was thrilled. Anytime I get to check out a new survival IP is a good day for me. So yeah, full disclosure, I'm being sponsored by these folks, but I also made sure to let them know that I was going to be critical of things I saw that I didn't like and provide feedback, to which they happily agreed. Turns out they want people to tell them what they want to see out of this game, which was pretty nice to hear for a change. Oh, and hey, while I have your attention, before I tell you all about it, as a reminder, if you end up enjoying this video and you aren't a subscriber, maybe consider hitting the sub button. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, this game is called Nested Lands, being produced by 1 Million Bits Horde and published by Meta Publishing. Nested Lands is releasing at some point in the future on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo platforms. It currently is only being shown as a single-player experience. However, in the future, and by the time it releases, the game will also have the option of cooperative multiplayer. It's the second game from this studio, with the first one being a much more cute and cuddly farming simulator style of game called Spirit of the Island. But that is not what this game is. This game is dark, and it's bleak, and it's lonely. You start out alone, washed ashore, nearly dead, and wearing rags, to find yourself face to face with a guy named Balder. That informs you a deadly plague has wiped out most of humanity in the area, at least as we know it. You decide, once you get your bearings and make some rudimentary tools, that you want to try to rebuild with those that have survived, recruit people to join you, fend off those that would attempt to take from you, and attempt to keep the plague at bay. Through resource gathering and town management, your job is to task your followers to build, gather resources, and defend your village in hopes to not only push out the plague, but also to prosper in this medieval European wasteland that you used to call home. This game is in a currently free-to-play playtest that began today, February 20th. The game has a very interesting mix of elements of different games that I've found myself enjoying over the years. Graphically, it reminds me of the early days of 7 Days to Die, and while it does look a little dated, I think the design decision for the look and feel of it was by choice, not by accident. Your objective is to build the game into a bustling township, but there are survival aspects that you have to maintain. There are gauges for food, water, temperature, cleanliness, restfulness, and there's another that crops up from time to time that has to deal with infection. This means that you have to keep warm, either through clothing or fires at night, and you have to maintain a food supply either by hunting, gathering, or farming, among other things, like washing regularly, or maybe building a well so that there's a water source nearby. The town building and aesthetics surrounding it, with the resource gathering in look and feel, reminded me a lot of games like Valheim or Sons of the Forest, and the town management aspect with jobs and whatnot being assigned to your followers reminded me a bit of games like Oxygen Not Included or RimWorld. Now granted, RimWorld has some freakish accidents, and I'm not sure if this game will have that stuff, but we'll see. It's pretty early. The primary long-term aspect of this game is to keep your people from getting sick and dying from the plague. The plague spreads via corpses of both people and animals, which gets represented by these red-looking ominous poison clouds that show up over the top of dead stuff. And the only way to get rid of these plague sources and keeping them from wiping out you and your entire village is to burn the bodies with a torch. But you don't get any torches until you learn how to craft them first. This is very reminiscent of games like Project Zomboid. It's an interesting mix that combines a lot of aspects from games that I have enjoyed a lot in the past. And the game looks like it's got a really solid core to it, with enough good survival game loop to keep someone interested for quite a while. Obviously, this is a very, very early alpha test, and the devs are looking for feedback. So, here are my impressions. Overall, the game presents itself as a pretty significant challenge early on. My first time playing, I realized I hadn't begun farming a sustainable food source early on enough, and that ended up causing just about everyone I had recruited, including myself, to starve. That's a good sign of a challenging game. Gotta plan better and run it back. And while there is a lot to do throughout the various systems that I've seen so far, the crafting system still has things to fix. In most survival games, for example, if you need to make, say, 20 of something, you would go to the recipe and either punch in how many of an item you wanted, or you'd click an item a certain number of times, or maybe you'd click an arrow, and that would queue up the craft for however many you wanted to make. In most games cases, you could then close your inventory or crafting menu, and it would craft stuff while you moved around to gather gather more items, or some other task you could do while waiting for that stuff to bake. But right now, the game doesn't have this option, with the one exception of the campfire where you can cook several of the same food item all at once. That means, like, to build, say, a hut or for somebody to live in order to be able to craft that hut, you need a bunch of fiber rope. One fiber rope takes like 3 or 4 seconds to make. You need 20 of them. That means that you have to stand there and keep clicking the button for the fiber rope until you make 20 of them. Not fun. The option to queue up crafts in the crafting menus also doesn't exist on crafting stations either. And while you also have the option to make items yourself, like say a bow at the carpenter's hut, you can't have the follower you've assigned to be a carpenter for that hut make you a bow by queuing it up in the hut and have the carpenter go gather the materials to make it. You have to collect all of those requisite materials yourself, bring it to the bench, and make it on your own. Normally, in any other survival type of game, this would be a non-issue. No big deal. Do that in all kinds of survival games. But in this case, you're supposed to be managing a town. And right now, the game loop feels very hands-on for something you're supposed to be able to recruit followers to create some level of automation while you manage things on a more macro level and then go out and explore the area. You don't really get the option to do that. You have to micro things a whole lot more. There are some aspects of the game that work pretty well, though. The builder, for instance, works with whatever you put down for a building blueprint, and as long as any of the required items are located in a chest, the builder will go pick them up, place them into the structure, and wait for the rest of the stuff to show up. Once all of the items are accumulated, the builder will go create it. It works pretty good. The townsfolk also get perks that are associated with them that are like good and bad, much like characters in games like Oxygen Not Included or RimWorld. Sometimes they're insomniacs, or they're lazy, or they eat a lot. Other times they're good at taking orders, or they're neat freaks and they need to bathe all of the time. Other times they're good at taking orders, or they say they're proficient with a mining pick. It's kind of a dice roll, but you get the idea. As the game progresses, eventually the game wants you to go out and venture and find bandits before they find you, and you're supposed to take them out. The quest log doesn't really point you to which bandit camp in the area is the one you're supposed to go after, and there are a few around, which ends up making the game a little disorienting in terms of where you're supposed to go next. And combat isn't really all that functional as of yet. The animations for things like sword swinging, blocking, etc. are a bit stiff feeling, and there was this funny bug where you couldn't crouch and fire a bow at the same time. The game made you stand up for it instead, which I thought was a little bit silly if I was trying to be stealthy. Also, I noticed that there was a bug where I wasn't able to sneak up on someone and do a stealth kill if they were laying on the ground to sleep. But again, this is alpha stuff, and this is why we're here. To give feedback, the stuff devs want to know about. From what I've been led to believe, in terms of what's actually on the map and available to explore, there's only about a third or so of the amount of content they're planning on having in the game actually in the game. And as of now, I've logged around 10 hours or so, just kind of getting acclimated to my surroundings, which makes me think once they've got the bits and bobs ironed out, that the game will have a solid amount of content to work through before you end up hitting the end of game, so to speak. Even with its flaws, there's definitely some charm to this game for me. At least for me. And hey, right now it's free, so there's an opportunity to maybe make it better. But I do think the vision is there. I gotta say, I do. Even with its flaws, there's definitely some charm to this game for me. And when I was live today showing chat, they seemed pretty interested in the title, so that's always a positive sign. Well, that's what I have for this one, guys. Let me know what you think. Maybe give the playtest a try and see how it feels for you and if it grabs your attention or not. If you find something that you think deserves a change, maybe pop on over to the Nested Lands Discord and give them some feedback. Thank you for lending me your eyeballs, everybody. I'll see you in the next one.